Welcome to Framework, the podcast that makes the NIST cybersecurity framework practical, engaging, and accessible. Whether you're a cybersecurity professional, business leader, or simply curious about how organizations defend against cyber threats, this series is for you. This podcast is inspired by a comprehensive guide to the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0, a best-selling resource written by cybersecurity expert Dr. Jason Edwards and trusted by professionals worldwide. In each episode, we'll leverage a few insights from Jason's extensive book to dive deep into CSF 2.0, unpacking every function, category, and subcategory with real-world applications you can immediately use. If you're enjoying this episode and want to learn more, head over to cyberauthor.me to grab your copy of the book and access additional resources to enhance your cybersecurity journey. You can also visit baremetalcyber.com, where over 2 million people last year explored expert insights, articles, and practical tools across a wide range of cybersecurity topics. PR.AA-04, Securing Identity Assertions. PR.AI-04 ensures that organizations protect identity assertions to prevent unauthorized access, identity spoofing, and authentication bypass attacks. This subcategory belongs to the Protect function within the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework, version 2.0, emphasizing that securing identity assertions is critical to maintaining trust in authentication processes and preventing identity fraud. Without proper security controls, organizations risk attackers intercepting or forging identity assertions, leading to unauthorized access, session hijacking, or privilege escalation. By securing identity assertions, organizations ensure that authentication tokens, session identifiers, and single sign-on (SSO) assertions remain protected from tampering, interception, and replay attacks. A structured identity assertion security framework enables organizations to implement strong encryption, enforce assertion integrity validation, and monitor authentication tokens for anomalous activity. Organizations that adopt token-based authentication security integrate cryptographic identity verification and enforce real-time assertion monitoring improve their ability to prevent identity-based attacks, strengthen authentication security, and maintain trust in identity verification mechanisms. Multiple stakeholders play a role in securing identity assertions. Identity and access management (IAM) teams and security administrators are responsible for protecting authentication tokens, implementing assertion validation controls, and monitoring authentication security risks. Compliance officers and risk management teams ensure that identity assertion security policies align with industry standards, regulatory frameworks, and enterprise security governance. Application developers and system architects play a critical role in integrating secure assertion handling mechanisms into authentication workflows, preventing unauthorized token access, and enforcing secure session management. Securing identity assertions is implemented through token encryption, digital signature validation, session expiration controls, and real-time assertion monitoring. This includes deploying signed authentication assertions to prevent tampering, enforcing short-lived session tokens to limit replay attacks, and integrating multi-factor authentication, MFA, for assertion verification. Organizations that fail to secure identity assertions risk authentication token theft, session hijacking, and unauthorized credential reuse. Several key terms define identity assertion security and its role in cybersecurity governance. Identity assertions ensure that organizations use secure digital statements confirming an identity claim during authentication and authorization. Token-based authentication ensures that organizations replace traditional credential-based authentication with encrypted tokens that verify identity without transmitting passwords. Digital signatures for assertions ensure that organizations validate identity assertions using cryptographic signatures to detect tampering and ensure integrity. Session management controls ensure that organizations enforce time-bound authentication assertions to prevent reuse or session hijacking. Federated identity security ensures that organizations securely authenticate users across multiple domains using industry standards, such as Security Assertion Markup Language, SAML, and OpenID Connect. Challenges in securing identity assertions often lead to authentication bypass vulnerabilities, session hijacking risks, and exposure to replay attacks. One common issue is failure to encrypt identity assertions, where organizations transmit authentication tokens in plain text. Another issue is inadequate assertion expiration controls, where organizations issue long-lived authentication tokens without expiration limits, increasing the risk of session hijacking. Some organizations mistakenly believe that assertion-based authentication alone is sufficient for security, without recognizing that additional security controls, such as assertion integrity validation and real-time monitoring, are necessary to prevent identity spoofing. When organizations implement structured identity assertion security frameworks, they enhance authentication security, reduce unauthorized access risks, and ensure authentication assertion integrity remains protected against emerging threats. A structured identity assertion security model ensures that cybersecurity teams enforce assertion security policies, business leadership aligns identity governance strategies with enterprise security objectives, and security teams integrate assertion validation mechanisms into ongoing cybersecurity governance initiatives. Organizations that adopt AI-driven authentication token monitoring, enforce cryptographic identity assertion signing, and integrate real-time assertion risk detection into cybersecurity governance develop a comprehensive identity assertion security strategy that strengthens resilience against identity-based cyber threats. Organizations that fail to secure identity assertions face severe security, operational, and compliance risks. Without proper protection of authentication assertions, businesses risk attackers intercepting, forging, or replaying identity claims to gain unauthorized access to systems, applications, and sensitive data. A common issue is failure to implement assertion encryption, where organizations transmit identity assertions in plain text, making them vulnerable to interception in transit. Another major challenge is inadequate assertion validation, where organizations fail to verify the integrity of authentication assertions, allowing attackers to manipulate or reuse them for unauthorized access. By implementing structured identity assertion security policies, organizations ensure that authentication mechanisms maintain integrity, assertion-based authentication processes are safeguarded against tampering, and identity claims remain verifiable at every stage of the authentication process. A well-defined assertion security framework prevents unauthorized access attempts, ensures compliance with regulatory mandates, and strengthens enterprise authentication security. Organizations that deploy token encryption, enforce short-lived authentication assertions, and integrate continuous assertion monitoring improve their ability to prevent authentication token misuse, detect assertion manipulation, and enhance trust in identity verification. At the partial tier, organizations lack structured identity assertion security frameworks, leading to weak authentication assertion controls, inconsistent assertion validation policies, and high exposure to session hijacking and authentication bypass attacks. Authentication assertions are handled reactively, with organizations only addressing assertion security weaknesses after security incidents occur. A small business at this level may allow authentication assertions to remain active indefinitely without expiration, making them susceptible to replay attacks where an attacker reuses an old authentication token to gain access. At the risk-informed tier, organizations begin to develop structured identity assertion security policies, ensuring that authentication assertions are encrypted and validated before granting access. However, assertion security efforts may still be limited, with inconsistent enforcement of assertion expiration and signature validation across different business units. A mid-size healthcare organization at this level may encrypt authentication assertions but fail to enforce strict expiration controls, allowing attackers with stolen tokens to use them for extended periods before detection. At the repeatable tier, organizations implement a fully structured identity assertion security framework, ensuring that authentication tokens, digital signatures, and assertion integrity validation mechanisms are consistently enforced across all enterprise applications. Identity assertion governance is formalized, with leadership actively involved in reviewing assertion security strategies, enforcing token encryption standards, and tracking assertion integrity. A multinational financial institution at this stage may deploy hardware-backed authentication assertion validation, using cryptographic signatures to ensure that every identity claim is verified before granting access. At the adaptive tier, organizations employ AI-driven authentication assertion monitoring, behavioral-based assertion validation models, and dynamic authentication token risk scoring to continuously assess assertion security and refine authentication security policies. Identity assertion security is fully integrated into enterprise cybersecurity governance, ensuring that organizations detect and mitigate authentication assertion threats in real time. A global cloud service provider at this level may use AI-powered authentication analytics to analyze assertion usage patterns, detect anomalous assertion activities, and automatically revoke compromised authentication tokens before they can be exploited. Securing identity assertions aligns with multiple controls in the National Institute of Standards and Technology Special Publication 800-53, ensuring that organizations implement structured identity assertion protection models and proactive authentication risk mitigation strategies. One key control is IA-4, identifier management, which requires organizations to manage and secure identity assertions, ensuring that authentication claims remain protected from misuse, theft, or tampering. A multinational technology firm implementing this control may enforce cryptographic protection of all identity assertions and require assertion revocation in the event of suspected compromise. Another key control is IA-7, cryptographic module authentication, which mandates that organizations use cryptographic techniques to verify the authenticity and integrity of authentication assertions, preventing assertion forgery or replay attacks. A government contractor implementing this control may require all authentication assertions to be signed and encrypted using FIPS-compliant cryptographic modules, ensuring that authentication claims remain protected even if intercepted. Securing identity assertions also aligns with AC-6 least privilege, which requires organizations to limit authentication assertions to only the necessary scope, duration, and permissions needed to perform a given action. This control ensures that organizations enforce fine-grained authentication assertion policies, preventing excessive access rights and reducing the risk of privilege escalation through forged or manipulated assertions. A multinational financial institution implementing this control may issue time-bound authentication assertions that expire within minutes to prevent reuse, ensuring that access is continuously revalidated. These controls can be adapted based on organizational size, industry, and cybersecurity maturity. A small business may implement basic assertion security measures, ensuring that authentication tokens are encrypted and expire within short intervals to prevent unauthorized reuse. A large enterprise may deploy AI-driven assertion risk assessments, zero-trust identity assertion models, and automated token revocation policies to ensure that authentication assertions remain secure and resistant to identity spoofing attacks. Organizations in highly regulated industries, such as finance, government, and healthcare, may require legally mandated assertion validation audits, cryptographic assertion protection, and compliance-driven identity verification frameworks to ensure that authentication security aligns with regulatory best practices. Auditors assess an organization's ability to secure identity assertions by reviewing whether structured, documented, and continuously enforced assertion security frameworks are in place. They evaluate whether organizations implement structured assertion validation models, enforce real-time identity assertion monitoring policies, and integrate predictive authentication assertion analytics into enterprise-wide cybersecurity governance strategies. If an organization fails to secure identity assertions effectively, auditors may issue findings highlighting gaps in assertion policy enforcement, weak alignment between identity assertion security processes and risk management strategies, and failure to integrate structured authentication assertion controls into cybersecurity governance frameworks. To verify compliance, auditors seek specific types of evidence. Identity assertion access logs and structured assertion policy documentation demonstrate that organizations formally define and enforce assertion security policies. Privileged assertion request logs and authentication assertion validation reports provide insights into whether organizations proactively assess and mitigate authentication assertion risks through structured assertion monitoring frameworks. Automated assertion validation reports and predictive authentication analytics show whether organizations effectively track, monitor, and enhance identity assertion security using real-world assertion risk assessments and adaptive assertion policies. A compliance success scenario could involve a global cloud services provider that undergoes an audit and provides evidence that identity assertion security strategies are fully integrated into enterprise cybersecurity governance. Ensuring that assertion risks are continuously monitored, authentication token integrity remains protected, and assertion validation policies are enforced consistently across the organization. Auditors confirm that assertion security policies are systematically enforced, assertion monitoring mechanisms are dynamically adjusted based on risk exposure, and enterprise-wide cybersecurity governance frameworks align with structured authentication assertion security requirements. In contrast, an organization that fails to implement structured authentication assertion security frameworks, neglects dynamic assertion risk validation, or lacks formalized assertion validation workflows may receive audit findings for poor assertion security, weak identity governance, and failure to align assertion protection strategies with regulatory compliance mandates. Organizations face multiple barriers in ensuring that authentication assertion security strategies remain continuous and effective. One major challenge is lack of automation in assertion security enforcement, where organizations fail to implement real-time assertion validation tools, leading to outdated or incomplete assertion protection policies. Another challenge is failure to align assertion security policies with evolving cyber threats, where organizations do not update assertion validation strategies based on new attack techniques, increasing exposure to authentication assertion-based cyber attacks. A final challenge is over-reliance on static authentication assertions, where organizations fail to integrate AI-driven assertion risk detection, behavioral-based assertion validation, or dynamic assertion expiration models, limiting their ability to detect and prevent sophisticated authentication assertion threats. Organizations can overcome these barriers by developing structured authentication assertion security frameworks, ensuring that assertion validation strategies remain continuously optimized, and integrating real-time authentication assertion monitoring models into enterprise-wide cybersecurity governance strategies. Investing in automated assertion protection platforms, predictive assertion risk analytics, and AI-driven authentication assertion monitoring solutions ensures that organizations dynamically assess, monitor, and refine authentication assertion security strategies in real time. Standardizing assertion security governance methodologies across departments, subsidiaries, and external business partners ensures that authentication assertion security policies are consistently applied, reducing exposure to assertion-based security risks and strengthening enterprise-wide authentication assertion protection resilience. By embedding authentication assertion security strategies into enterprise cybersecurity governance frameworks, organizations enhance assertion risk awareness, improve regulatory compliance, and ensure sustainable assertion validation processes across evolving cyber risk landscapes. That wraps up today's discussion on framework. Don't stop here. Head over to cyberauthor.me to explore more cybersecurity topics and discover a best-selling book covering NIST and other critical cyber frameworks. Please like, rate, and review this episode on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, remember that knowledge is power.